deepens, calls are growing more urgent to atone for centuries of slavery. An uncomfortable discussion is dead ahead, so stay with us. Welcome back. Slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, separate but equal, chronic discrimination at every level of American society, each a component of our American history for which we should feel collective shame and seek to remedy. Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is among lawmakers seeking. Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is among lawmakers seeking the payment of reparations to the descendants of those whose slave labor enriched white America. A little perspective, in 1860, the bodies of enslaved black Americans were valued at $3 billion, an asset worth more at that time than all of America's factories and railroads combined. Another fact, in 2021, the average white American family has roughly 10 times the wealth of the average black American family. There is certainly precedent for compensation. Native Americans, Japanese Americans, and even some Jewish Americans after the Holocaust all were offered some form of payment. So the question becomes, can any national reckoning be complete without at least attempting to deliver the unpaid wages for 2.5 centuries of bondage? I'm going to start with you, Tamara Bell.
Thank you, Greg. Listen, they have got to do something. This was government-sanctioned law to hold slaves. And if we can do reparations, or whatever you want to call it, to the Japanese prisoners, making sure Jewish people get art back that was taken from Hitler, try to help the Jewish nations that we can show to get back their money, they need to do something. The government kept this in place. And even after this was out of the books, they made sure the standards still stayed. They came up with sharecropping, which is another form of slavery. And even now, this is my opinion, care less whether you like it or not, the prison system that exists right now, where you have people, as marijuana becomes legal in different states, you still got people doing all kind of time for that is now no longer illegal for what that they were punished and the way they were done. We know the crack laws were way harder than the cocaine laws. So then you talking about something that happened 100 years ago. We're talking about something that systematically continues. That's why we need to support House Bill 40, 100%. They need to do something.
All right, Charles Blaine, you're a conservative, but this issue may rise above partisan politics.
Yeah, I think it does, and I think when you look at a lot, I mean, listen, this is a conversation we need to have because I think it's coming in one form or fashion. Marshall, Texas, a small town somewhere between here and Dallas, they actually brought this issue up a couple months ago because in their county they knew that they had one of the largest slave populations in the state of Texas back in the 1860s, and so last month they brought up a conversation about giving reparations to descendants of those slaves. They pulled it off of the city council agenda and didn't do it, but it started a conversation. Austin, Texas also passed something about a year ago that wanted to start a process of looking at how they can pay reparations to descendants of slaves. So it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I think even today you still see vestiges of the past. I mean, we have a bill coming out of the Senate that wants to remove racial prohibitions from the deed restrictions. I mean, these things are still embedded in the policy and in law today, and so I do think that we need to have this conversation. Now, is it going to be a direct cash payment? I don't know. Maybe we should look at something like assistance with down payment for housing, or maybe free education or something like that. We should have that conversation. I don't know what the best form of it is, but I do think that conversation is important to have.
Okay, Marcus, take 45 seconds here.
So let me chime in on this, and respectfully, Charles and tomorrow, if they don't need to do something, they need to write a check. Charles, it's not an idea of a conversation that needs to be had. An action needs to be taken, and that is a check. People who can't figure out what should happen, look at what happened. You got free labor for hundreds of years. You owe a debt. Pay it up. And I need to say this, right? Because when people think reparations, they're only thinking about slavery. My grandmother, my great-grandmother worked in this nation without the right to vote. You owe me dimes and dollars for what you denied my ancestors the opportunity to do.
All right, Bob. It's a pretty good argument. We're spending trillions of dollars. Why aren't we paying this bill?
Well, I'm going to go back to, you talked about the previous reparations that were done. Those were all paid directly to the people who were directly impacted by the atrocities that were committed against them. How do you identify who should receive these payments and who should pay these payments? You know, it's I don't understand that part of it at all. But we've been working for 50 years to try to address some of the wrongdoings that were done earlier in this country. We have minority set-asides for disadvantaged businesses. We have minority hiring preferences. We have a lot of different programs out there to try to push all minorities up, not just the ancestors of a certain segment of people, which is probably a pretty small piece of the American population at this point. So let's look at ways that we can bring up all people in this and help everybody, and not be doing something that's really divisive. You know, I think this would be a hugely divisive issue as it tried to go through Congress. Let's find ways we can work together to help all of these people.
Yeah, we can do that after you give me my money.
All right, we're going to have more conversations on this issue.